Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over to England once again and we're going to have a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. And as I always say to you, it's always nice to try new beers from different breweries, and this is one that I am quite curious about because I've heard very good things about these guys. So for this one we are going to go to London, the capital city, and we're going to go to a suburb in the south of the city called Norwood, which is home to Gipsy Brewing Company. So this is going to be my very first beer from these guys. This one is called the Bustler. It comes in at 9.4% ABV and they're describing this one as a double IPA. But from what I understand, this one has a Norwegian Voss Kveik yeast in it, so maybe it's fairer to call this one a double Kveik IPA. These Kveik yeasts are more kind of farmhousey and things. They've got a lovely kind of smooth breadiness to them, from what I remember, and I actually thought these were going to be the next things to kind of take off in the whole IPA scene, but they kind of faded away a little bit in the same way that Brut IPAs did. I'm not sure how popular they are, they still are up in Norway actually, but yeah, I certainly like them, and it's just a bit of a shame that they kind of didn't catch on a little bit more in my opinion. But at 9.4%, this beer could well be the strongest Kveik IPA that I've had from them so far. I couldn't find out whether this beer is one of the more kind of regular ones that they do, but I know that these guys are very experimental these days and they do have a bit of a core range. So I think this is one of the ones that was just kind of randomly chosen for the market over here in Sweden. Incidentally, we got this beer as part of the Tillfälligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden in the middle of November 2020. I think this one was released on like the 13th of November or something, if I remember rightly. But yeah, as I say, always cool to try new beers from different breweries. The English beer scene is thriving at the moment. There's lots of new breweries kind of opening up, and out of my friends in the English beer tubing scene, I think the ones that you are most likely to have seen review these beers would be Craig at Kent Beer Reviews, possibly Jake at Jaco Beer Reviews, maybe Brett at Beardy Beer Reviews, and possibly Harry as well at Blue Nose Beer Reviews. So do make sure you check out those four guys. They've got really nice channels there that you can have a look at, and they do some very nice videos as well. So yeah, I would recommend you check out those guys and see what they're doing. So maybe they'll review the Gipsy Hill beers a little bit more regularly than I would. But one thing that I do have planned for the future is to go to London and meet up with my friend Craig and do some filming at a few different locations around the city. So we'll need to see about getting that sorted once this whole COVID-19 thing buggers off. I'd love to do a little bit of an England tour and visit all my friends and you know, film some out and about videos throughout England. Of course, I do need to do a few more at home in Scotland as well at some point. So yeah, we'll get that done maybe at Christmas time. We'll need to see how everything goes. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. Always cool to introduce new English breweries to you here on the channel, especially since we're getting a better selection of stuff over here in Scandinavia these days. So yeah, let's go for it then, guys. As always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Gipsy Hill Brewing Company. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the English beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly these days, as I mentioned. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Gipsy Hill Brewing Company then, on to my brewery notes. So Gipsy Hill Brewing Company, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Norwood in South London. It's about halfway between central London and Croydon to the south, but the brewery was founded by Sam McMakin, Charlie Shaw, and then Simon Wood joined them in the very early stages as well. But Charlie and Sam apparently met through a mutual friend that was aware that they both wanted to start their own breweries. So apparently they met often at the Rake in Borough Market, and they discussed their plans together. Then they eventually drew up a business plan and decided to go for it. In 2014 they established the company officially, and then Simon joined them in April of 2014, and then they ordered their first equipment and rented out a unit in Gipsy Hill in South London, hence the name of the brewery, and they went on to produce their first beers in July of that year. The following year, They opened up a tap room at the brewery, and then in 2016 they opened up their first bar, which is called the Douglas Fir, tallest tree in Scotland incidentally. I think the tallest ones are about 65 metres, which is just mental. But they also rented a second unit so that they could move the warehousing out of the brewery and expand their brewery capacity. They also made the decision to rip up the brewery floor and replace it. But this allowed them to kind of upgrade their equipment quite substantially to the point where they could brew 10,000 hectolitres. But they also built a large cold store, one of the largest ones in London apparently, so that they could distribute their beer all over the place. And they also added an analysis lab as well, which they said was vital for them to kind of brew on the bigger scale. But a little bit later on, they upgraded their tap room as well, and they also added a barrel aging program in 2018 as well. Over the course of 2019, they produced around 13,000 hectolitres of beer, and as of November 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 165 different kinds of beer to date. So yeah, a brewery that really seems to have undergone quite a substantial growth over a sustained period. They are known these days for being very, very experimental. They've got a core range as well as various kind of different beers, and if you think about that, 165 beers over the space of like 6 years, that is roughly, you know, about 25 beers a year, something like that. Yeah, about 20, just a little bit over 25 beers per year in the space of over, well, probably it's better to say 5 years. Yeah, maybe it's about 30 beers a year, because they did start in the middle of 2014, as we said. But yeah, a very experimental brewery, this one, from what I understand. This one, I suspect, is one of their more kind of experimental beers. But yeah, definitely cool to have another London craft brewery for you here on the channel. So let me know your own thoughts, as I say, about this brewery in the comment section below, and let me know what your favourite beers are from them. It's always interesting to get recommendations from you guys that are, you know, living locally to these breweries and stuff. But we know that London has a very thriving craft beer scene. I believe my first London craft beer review was it was one from like London Fields Brewery, who went bust, but I think they're back up and running from what I understand. But there's also one of the other breweries that I came into contact with very early on was Kernel, and that's somewhere that I really want to visit in London at some point. So Craig and I probably will go to the Kernel tap room and film a little bit of an out and about video or something like that. But I'd love to get those guys on for an interview as well, and hopefully we can go and have a little look at Gipsy Hill as well. But I think it's maybe a little bit out of the way. We'll figure it out. We will do a lot of filming in London at some point in the future. But as I say, very cool to have these guys on the channel for the first time, and do let me know a little bit more about this brewery. It's always good to have a bit of local knowledge in there. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Gipsy Hill Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on and have a taste of this beer then. As you can see, there's a woman on the front here with some fantastic purple hair. I'm guessing that this is either the label artist or one of the people that works for the brewery. I think it said on the website that they have about 20 employees these days. The artwork on there, you can see it looks a little bit like New York or something. There you can also see the yellow cabs, but it says on the side here, Bustler is a double IPA chock full of mosaic and racal, pumping out dank stone fruits, citrus and pine flavours, backed up with a Kveik yeast, rounding out this double IPA with big pithy esters. It goes well with street smarts and hailing cabs. Features Kat, direct sales champion. So yeah, Kat, this would be Kat, the sales director of the brewery, I guess. But yeah, nicely presented can, this one. I think it comes across really nicely. So yeah, let's get this guy out and we will get on with the tasting then. Very curious to see what it has in store for us. 440ml can incidentally, and I think I paid about 55 or maybe 60 Swedish kroners for this one. So that's about £5 for those of you who are watching back in London. Yeah, but 10 kroners, €1 more expensive than we would pay for an equivalent Swedish brewed beer. Usually add on about 10 kroners for an export or import beer, we should say. So yeah, this certainly does look very nice though. As I say, it's always cool to have new and different English breweries for you here on the channel, but that beer does look really quite impressive, I have to say. You can smell the fruit off this as well. So like I said to you, this beer has mosaic and racal in it. Mosaic we know from America. Lovely big kind of tangerine orange hop. Rakow I encountered a few years back, quite a few years back, in New Zealand in 2015. Lovely kind of soft tropical fruits, mangoes, papayas, apricots, everything. Rakow is a beautiful, beautiful hop. But you could see when we poured this beer, it came out with more than a half finger of a frothy, kind of cream coloured head. That is just fading away to be a very thin foamy layer. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass on this one, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head, and you can see the colour of this beer is like a lovely kind of mixed tropical fruit juice in there, like a peachy, apricot-y type mixed fruit juice there. Yeah, definitely one of the kind of deeper coloured beers that we've come across before. Remember, the few things that determine the colour of your beer, it's one, it's the length of the boil, two, it's the types of malts that you use, and I guess to a degree the yeast is going to affect that as well. I think the Kveik beers always tend to be a little bit more kind of rich in colour like this one, rather than being very pale and white. But then again, as I say, I think most of it is down to the types of malt that you use, and the longer you boil the beer, the more caramelisation of sugars that you get, and thus the darker your beer goes. But yeah, it certainly looks lovely, this one. You can see it is pretty damn hazy, this one, which is what you would expect from a Kveik IPA, a Norwegian farmhouse IPA. So yeah, and at 9.4%, this one is going to have a lot of oats and wheat and stuff like that in it as well, so it is going to be pretty hefty in terms of its haziness. So this is not a surprise at all, to be honest with you. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma of this one then, and just see how we get on. I'm very, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. Ooh, that does come across really nicely, I have to say. You can smell the booziness out of this beer already. You can smell the big booziness in this one for sure. But it does smell like a very, very nice beer. Yeah, I mean, straight away with this one, you can you smell that. This one, to me, it doesn't smell as sort of farmhousey as some of the other Kveik IPAs that I've had. Computer fan's going a bit crazy. This one, it doesn't smell as kind of crazy as some of the New England sort of IPAs. It just isn't. Brain's not working. It doesn't smell as farmhousey as some of these Kveik IPAs that I've had before. Usually, you get a lot more kind of just. It just comes across as a little bit more grainy and things like this. But this one, it really smells a little bit more malty and kind of boozy and caramelly, which is quite interesting. I get a lot of kind of buttered candy, kind of Werther's Original notes out of this beer. Yeah, but the aroma of this is lovely, I'll say that. So yeah, underneath this one, forming the backbone of the beer, you do get that lovely, soft, white bready character to it. It does have a little bit of wheaty bitiness in the back of the nose, and I do get a little bit of an almost oaty type character to it, but it smells a little bit too smooth and not quite creamy enough for oats. Oats can often give you the impression of that kind of petit filou yogurt type thing, but for me, the bready base of this beer is too smooth for that. And there is, as I say, a little bit of bitey wheatiness in there, but not overly much. It's almost like a soft but still quite smooth white bready character there. That is your Kveik yeast backbone. But I would say that the brown sugars you get out of this, they are really prominent in this one. In fairness, when it's a 9.4% beer, you would expect a little bit of that. And we have seen a trend in these kind of more hazy IPAs recently where they've been adding a little bit of a more sweetening malt, like Caramalt, Caramunich, things like that. We have been seeing a little bit of that trend with these kind of beers of late. But yeah, I think the yeah, you know, the kind of aroma profile that you get out of this beer is really, really quite nice. It's just a little bit more kind of brown sugary than I was expecting. So you definitely get a bit of a straight up sweet caramel out of this one. You can smell a bit of the booziness mixing in with that as well. There's maybe a wee hint of a McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing, but you've also got a nice kind of I would say that you've also got quite a bit of a nice kind of Werther's Original type quality to this one as well, which is good. So I really like how the malty side of this beer goes together. Actually, the malty and yeasty side of things. There's some really interesting stuff going on in this one. You do get one or two little woody aromas coming out of the beer a little bit later on, but you can smell a lot of the brown sugary notes for me are coming from the malty side of the beer. But the yeast really forms the backbone there. And as I say, it's like a soft but very smooth white bread. One or two little woody notes. You do get a wee bit of wheaty bitiness out of this one. But yeah, the fruity side, not the fruity side, the yeasty and malty side of this beer is quite nice, and you do get a little bit of fruitiness out of the yeast there too, but we'll come to that later. So yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. Yeah, you get more and more of that butter candy out of this as you smell it right enough. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, I do get a little touch of earthiness at the back of the nose from this one. That's Mosaic that's going to give you that. I've always found that Mosaic has just a little touch of an earthy component to it. There's a lot of big floral aromaticity from this beer. I would suggest that that comes more from the Mosaic. Mosaic, if I remember rightly, is about 14% alpha acid. Whereas Rakow, I think it's, for the amount of flavour you get out of Rakow is surprisingly light in terms of its alpha acid. When I looked it up, I'm sure it was only about 8%, and that's why I remember, because I was really surprised by that, especially when you consider Nelson Sauvin is like 16%, it's crazy. But yeah, you get a lot of floral aromaticity out of this one. I would suggest that most of that probably comes from the Mosaic in the beer, but then you've also got quite a bit of a zesty, grassy character to this one. So yeah, it's a really interesting kind of green side to this beer, but quite floral and aromatic. I wouldn't say spicy, more just really kind of fresh and zesty and aromatic actually, this one. So yeah, lovely, lovely smelling beer, I have to say. Yeah, the fruits in this one as well come across really, really nicely. I mean, for me, there's some a really nice kind of sort of passion fruity backbone to this one. The thing that you will notice about this beer, I'll say straight away, the tropical side of this beer, the tropical fruit side of this beer is going to come from the Rakow, and the more kind of citrusy notes will come from the Mosaic. That's the kind of thing you've got with these two hops here. So yeah, for me, there's a nice little bit of a stronger passion fruit from this one. You do get a little bit of an oily mango in there as well, and there's a few kind of there are a few sort of things like, you know, a bit of soft apricot and papaya and stuff like that. I think that's probably a good kind of roundup of the kind of hoppy components of this beer. Would be kind of big passion fruit, a bit of an oily mango, and then a juicy kind of papaya, apricot-y sort of thing. But you do smell at the front of the nose a more oily, you really do smell a more oily kind of tangerine note out of this one, and that's the Mosaic all the way. The Mosaic is the one that's going to give you that lovely oily tangerine sort of thing. There is a wee bit of zestiness to the grass, like I said, a sort of lemony, grassy, zesty sort of thing. And I don't know which hop that would come from. I don't remember getting that from Rakow with the IPAs that I was drinking in New Zealand quite a few years ago, but then again, it has been a long time. Maybe my memory has gone with that, but yeah, the aroma profile of this one I think is really nice. Lovely big juicy fruits, and probably some of the softness of the fruits in this beer will be coming from the yeast as well. The Kveik yeast can give you a good little bit of a soft kind of almost slightly tropical fruitiness to the beer as well. So yeah, just take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of this one before you get stuck into it. I think this is a really nice smelling beer, so enjoy that for yourselves. But let's have a taste of this one then and see how we get on. I'm really curious about this beer. So this one is the Bustler, a 9.4% double Kveik IPA from Gipsy Hill Brewing Company in Norwood in South London over in England. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers, my first beer from Gipsy Hill Brewing Company. Curious about this. That is quite a nice one actually. It is big and boozy. I think with this beer, with the fact that it's so boozy, maybe some of the kvass element, the Kveik, the Voss Kveik elements are a bit lost in it. Although in fairness, maybe you just need to let it open up a wee bit. You can see, you do get a wee bit of the stuff kind of coming out the further you go into the aftertaste. As I said to you, the whole thing with the channel, of course, it was me wanting to document my learning experience when it comes to beers. And as I said, this is probably the strongest Kveik IPA that I've tried thus far. So of course this one does strike me as being a little bit kind of unusual in a sense, because it you know, just because it is so boozy. And the thing with the Kveik IPA is I think most of the ones I would have had before would be around kind of 6% or so, and if it's a Kveik IPA, I would suggest that probably the focus would be on the yeast, as it would be with like a Belgian IPA. So I'm not sure with this one. I mean, it is a nice beer, don't get me wrong on that. This is a very, very nicely done beer, but I do wonder if maybe the fact that it's so boozy, you know, takes the focus away from the yeasty side of it and puts it a little bit more on the malts, to be honest. So yeah, it could be that. It could be that with this one. But like I say, it is a really, really solid beer, and you can tell that straight away. I mean, on the basis of this one, I would certainly want to try some of the other beers from Gipsy Hill. It'd be cool to try like a kind of West Coast, I think a West Coast IPA and a regular New England would be really interesting. Something from the dark end of the spectrum, and a lager as well, would also be really good. So what I will say about this beer is you can tell that this one is a really high quality beer. You can definitely tell that from this straight away, and you get the impression of these guys that they are a damn good brewery. But as I say, I'm just not sure about the level of booziness in this for a Kveik IPA. But if you just consider it as a regular double IPA, which is what they've called it, I noticed that they haven't called it a Kveik IPA, which maybe is intentional. Maybe that's the reason. That could be the thing. If you consider this as a regular double IPA, then it is a pretty damn solid boozy IPA in my mind. But yeah, if you have got a Kveik yeast in that, I would always be a little bit more inclined to try and show the yeast off a little bit more, which is hard when you've got a boozier beer. Unless you're going down the Belgian route, of course. So yeah, this is quite an interesting one for me. And I love reviewing quirky. This beer is certainly quite quirky. And as you'll know if you've watched the channel, I love reviewing beers that kind of test my palate and stuff a little bit. And this one is certainly doing that. So we have to say, thumbs up to Gipsy Hill for this. They certainly have given me a beer here that I need to think about a little bit. So yeah, let's try and break down the flavour of this one then. So straight away with this beer, you get a nice kind of soft, white bready, smooth thing. That just blankets the middle of your palate. If you go towards the back of that front third of your tongue, you can feel the breadiness just thicken up on that back third of your palate, and it is very, very nice actually. I love how that goes together. But then you do get a little bit of wheaty bitiness there in the very back of the tongue as well. But yeah, as you move further forward on that back third of your palate, the thickness just kind of goes, it just kind of thickens up a wee bit, and then as you go into the middle third of your palate, it goes down. And then you've got the more kind of malty side of this beer coming out actually. I would say that, you know, the Kveik side of this beer really comes out a little more in the aftertaste. When you actually have the liquid on your tongue, it's a wee bit more difficult to kind of pick it out just because of the booziness of the beer, I would say. But in the aftertaste, the Kveik really does start to show its head a little bit more. I would say that about this one. Yeah, I mean, the yeastiness, as I say, just builds up on this one. It almost has a wee bit of that kind of, it's almost got a wee bit of that sort of banana-y, kind of clovey sort of thing that you would expect like a Hefeweizen. I do get a little bit of that, kind of that banana clovey bubblegummy sort of thing in the middle of your palate. You are going to feel that. So in that middle third of your tongue, soft kind of smooth white bready base there. On top of that, you get this thicker kind of yeasty component that's like, it's got like almost like a kind of big circle. It's like, to say, clove, bananas, bubblegummy sort of thing. You really get that. But then in the very centre of your palate, kind of sitting on top of that, you get a straight up sort of sweet caramel there, and it's quite a boozy caramel as well at 9.4%. That makes sense. But underneath that, you can feel a little bit more of a kind of butter candy sort of, you can feel a little bit more of a kind of butter candy Werther's Original type thing. So yeah, you definitely get quite a bit of that out of this beer, I have to say. Yeah. It's really, this is a quirky beer. The more I drink this, the more it grows on me. I have to say that about it. And the more that the yeastiness starts to build in this one. It's So yeah, I think maybe my initial statement that the yeast was a bit difficult to detect was a bit difficult. I would stick to what I said though about I think the Kveik IPAs are better maybe as singles rather than doubles. Because if you do have a Kveik yeast, you do want the focus to be a little bit more on the kind of bready, yeasty side of the beer. And you have got a fair bit of that. As I say, it develops into the aftertaste, but I think the level of booziness you have in this one puts a bit of focus on the caramel and the brown sugars in this beer. So I will say that it leaves me a bit unconvinced about the concept of a double Kveik IPA or an imperial Kveik IPA, whatever you want to call it. But as a regular IPA, as a regular double IPA, this one does work out quite nicely, I have to say. So it does get a thumbs up from me, this one. But I would be curious to try some of the other beers that these guys have done. At 9.4%, though, this one is a wee bit of a beast. It's quite close to being a triple IPA, in fairness. I would say that probably when you get above 10%, then you've got to call these beers a triple, to be honest with you. So really close to a triple IPA, this one at 9.4. But yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of this beer then. I think we've covered the kind of malty and yeasty side of things. There's a wee bit of woodiness comes out of this one as you go further into the aftertaste, mind you. But yeah, this is a quirky beer, I have to say. Yeah, so back corners of the palate, there's a wee bit of earthiness to this one. As you move further, that's the mosaic. As you move further forward, you can feel the earthiness fades away a little bit, and then as you reach the front corners of the palate, it gets a little bit of floral aromaticity, but the floral aromaticity is nowhere near as big and aromatic as you would expect from the aroma. It's a lot more reserved in my mind. Round the front curve of the palate, the beer is a little bit lighter and grassy. Again, it's not quite as zesty as I would have expected either, so the green side of the hops in this beer really seem a bit toned down for me. And again, maybe that's a reflection of the fact that this is a more kind of yeast forward beer. That could well be the thing. But yeah, on the front third of your palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just push their way out of the beer. And again, for me, this one strikes me as quite interesting. You've got a good balance between it being juicy and more kind of oily, I think. So yeah. Yeah, I really like how this goes together. It's the fruity side of this beer. It's really quite quirky as well. You can feel a little bit of the yeastiness contributing to this as well, because underneath that front third of your palate, you can feel a little bit of the kind of Kveik yeast showing its head. But on the back, at the back of that front third of your palate, you've got a wee bit of a kind of stronger passion fruity note there. As you move further forward, it's a little bit more mango-like, and you've also got a little bit of those are the elements that are coming from the racal, I would suggest. But then you've also got a wee bit of a kind of softer, like apricot papaya sort of thing. But I would say that the passion fruit and the mango are a lot more prominent in the flavour than the aroma was having you believe. So that's the racal giving you that, definitely. The racal is the one that's giving you those stronger kind of stony fruits. But then the softer kind of notes, I suspect, are coming from the yeasty component of the beer, definitely. But then as you reach the kind of front, as you reach the front part of your palate there, you do get a little bit more of that. You do get a wee bit more of the how do you say, the kind of oily orangey kind of quality coming out of the beer. You do get a little bit of that in there, and that's the mosaic. The mosaic gives you that lovely tangerine, slightly orangey, oily thing on the very tip of your palate there. So I really like how this beer goes together. The fruity side of this one, I think, is really nicely done, and you've got hops and yeast playing a role in this beer. This is definitely one of the quirkiest IPAs I've had in a little while, actually, and I think if you consider this one as a general IPA, I think you would really like that. It is a boozy one, you know, it is pushing towards the triple IPA territory, to be honest with you. As a Kveik IPA, I think I would maybe just want a little bit less booziness out of it, to be honest. So it depends how you want to think about this beer. Like I say, as a regular double IPA, or a regular Imperial. It's probably better to call it an Imperial because it is bordering triple, like I said. But if you consider it as a regular Imperial, then it's a really, really good beer. If you consider it as a Kveik IPA, which I was tempted to, I think this one, I think the booziness sort of takes away a little bit of the focus from the Kveik. So yeah, that I would say with that, I think it's a bit pointless to use Kveik yeast if you're going to this level of alcohol, although it does in fairness produce a nice beer. And I don't know how common this is. I mean, maybe quite a few breweries are using these Kveik yeasts as you know, in these big triple IPAs. I honestly don't know, but very few actually say that explicitly on the cans like Gipsy Hill have here, so not sure about that statement, to be honest with you. But if you consider it as a Kveik IPA, I would think I would want just a little bit more focus on the yeast and a little bit less booziness out of it. So overall, as a beer, I like it. I do like this one. But stylistically, I think there's a wee touch of confusion, at least from on my part, at least with this one. But it's a lovely beer, this, and it shows off the Rakow hop really nicely. Rakow is a lovely New Zealand hop that I think should get a little bit more attention. As I said, for the low alpha acid content that it has, it's got a hell of a fruity punch to it. Mosaic we know very well, of course, and you know, the yeast contributes a little bit to the fruitiness in this beer as well. But yeah, this beer does get a thumbs up from me. I like it, and as I say, there's a few stylistic kind of points to consider here, but overall it is a very nice beer, and it does make me want to try a few more of the other Gipsy Hill things. In terms of the mouthfeel of this one, then I would say it's probably fair to describe it as mid-bodied. Yeah, mid-bodied. Carbonation is quite smooth in this one. It does have a little bit of oiliness to it as well, which is interesting considering it is a Kveik IPA. So yeah, there is a wee bit of oiliness to this one. You've got a nice little bit of hoppy bitterness. I think this one maybe has about 50 IBUs, maybe even a little bit more than that, maybe 60. It does build in bitterness a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste, so there is a wee bit of that in there. The malty, yeasty side of the beer is quite smooth, but there is a good degree of boozy kind of sweetness in there. And you've also got some really nice kind of juicy, fruity characters in this one as well. But overall, as I say, I like this as an IPA. As an IPA, I like it, but as a Kveik IPA, I maybe want a little bit more focus on the yeast, and I think the booziness of this beer maybe takes away from that a little bit. But it certainly does make me curious to try a few of the other things from Gipsy Hill. So New England IPA, West Coast IPA, something dark, and then a lager, I think is what I would like to see from these guys. So I'll have a look at the website and see what they've got, and see if there is a possibility to get some of these when I'm home in Scotland. But fingers crossed we see a few more of these over here in Sweden. Certainly curious about this brewery. If they're producing something quite quirky like this to release here in Sweden, then it does stand them in good stead in my mind. So yeah, a quirky, an interesting review, this one. This beer is one that's definitely made me think a little bit, and I like beers like that. You know, after reviewing 200,500 beers, you do want things that are going to make you think a little bit. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one was called the Bustler Double IPA, the Kveik yeast in it, 9.4% ABV, from Gipsy Hill Brewing Company in Norwood, South London. As I say, quirky beer, and one that I've really enjoyed reviewing for you, so I hope that you guys have enjoyed my take on this one as well. Thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Gipsy Hill Brewing Company. We will hopefully return to these guys at some point fairly soon. But yeah, you will see more English beers reviewed over the next little while. They're always releasing new things over here through Systembolaget, so we'll keep an eye out for those. But yeah, the Bustler at 9.4% ABV, double Kveik IPA, I would say, or double IPA with a Kveik yeast, whatever you want to say, from Gipsy Hill Brewing Company in Norwood, South London. Slange, skål, cheers. The booze has gone to my head on this one, so I'll catch you guys in the next one. Skål.